top number one in Tampa and probably Florida is Burns Steakhouse, which requires a reservation many months in advance. Burns staff is especially skilled and trained with military precision to treat every table like a private dukedom of respect.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show. This is season 5 and the second episode of 2024. So I'm experimenting with a new camera and a new setup, and I hope we don't have a problem. I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 200 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust and the Farhud, Roots of the Arab-Nazi Alliance in the Holocaust, which described a bloody and animalistic massacre, first in Hebron in 1929, and then again in Baghdad in 1941, both similar to the ones we saw unfold in Israel October 7th, just over 100 days ago. And if you like our show's content, please spread the word, subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Please know that this show is a worldwide volunteer effort, totally unmonetized. Help us maintain our extremely high level of excellence and documentation. Our world is specifically threatened by ignorance and misinformation. We are at the tip of the spear of facts in context. So go to theedwinblackshow.com/support and thank you. We have solidarity today from many national organizations, such as the Emerson Family Foundation, the Fuel Freedom Foundation, the Israel on Campus Coalition, as well as Stand With Us, Jan18, the Israeli American Council, Emet, American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, ZOA Michigan, the Gross Family Center, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, the Southwest Jewish Congress, and plenty more. Thank you, everyone. That said, I only speak for myself and for history. The same goes for my guests. Today's episode is sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the just released audiobook of Faye Lincoln's highly acclaimed volume, Values That Shaped the World. It was done as part of a special Google Books project, and you can download it at valuesthatshapedtheworld.com. If you see our world values disintegrating before your very eyes, try this book. And this episode is co-sponsored by the Emerson Family Foundation, which is trying to make a better world for everyone, as well as the Fuel Freedom Foundation, which is looking for alternatives to a petroleum-dependent planet, and Israel on Campus Coalition, which is struggling to combat anti-Semitism at our colleges. Today, we welcome guests from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages, Newton, Mass, Chicago, and Tampa Bay. At least one of these people from Tampa is actually listening from Las Vegas. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from Australia, New Zealand, Holland, Sweden, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Austria, the Czech Republic, that's good, Great Britain, Ireland, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, India, and Israel, plus other countries. And if you have a question limited to today's topics, please place one short sentence without a preamble in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing. enjoying many tens of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present very, very tense, and a future still uncertain. And remember, we will not be censored. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. Now we're going to get to our long requested episode of the brand new feature here called The Full Plate to open this turbulent year in a few minutes, after some brief announcements and then some bad news items from the week. At the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site, we have just released more compelling and hard-hitting episodes. We have just released 3 vital edited episodes on artificial intelligence, parts 1, 2, and part 3. Artificial intelligence will be seeping into every facet of our life starting yesterday. In fact, Bill Gates just announced that within 5 years, every person on the planet will be transformed by artificial intelligence. Plus, we have released 2 critical episodes on our freedoms. Free speech under fire, which will scare the heck out of you, and soon we will be just 1 to 2 months behind in releasing episodes thanks to a superb team of spotters and editors. My tour continues. To kick off 2024, I just concluded the 4-event January series in Florida with the Gross Family Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism and the Holocaust at Florida Atlantic University. 600 oversold by 100. The hall was up to capacity. Boca Raton Synagogue, virtually every seat taken. And Palm Beach Gardens, Chabad, also wall-to-wall attendance, extra chairs carted in. Plus, my bonus event in Tampa, where I return to the University of South Florida Hillel to support students. We enjoyed a full house at the Hillel, both students and community, with attendance from as far away as Orlando. Internationally, in February, it's a return to Mexico City for a powerful community-wide 4-event series sponsored by Yad Vashem and that country's excellent Museum of Tolerance. In March, I deliver a presentation on AI and anti-Semitism at the Distinguished Holocaust Center of Ramapo College in New Jersey. And then I fly to Wheeling, West Virginia to address a tri-state gathering being busted and driven in from Pittsburgh, West Virginia, and Eastern Ohio, a big event. In April, I keynote the Canadian Privacy Conference in Montreal, and then the Hillcrest Jewish Center in Queens. You can get details of all of my events from edwinblack.com/events, and let's meet up in your city. Stand tall, I'm coming your way. Next, I'm happy to finally announce an unabridged audiobook of IBM and the Holocaust is now available. It was done in association with Google Books. You can find it at edwinblack.com/books. Finally, I remind my viewers of a terrible website you must know about, publishing the war crime documentation. These terrible videos. It is Hamas-massacre.net. That is Hamas-massacre.net. This is the documentation we must confront, just as we did after the Holocaust, but this is a magnitude worse. These atrocities were not committed decades ago, but just months ago. Not hidden, but gleefully broadcast to a cheering Palestinian world. When Israel has finished Hamas, there will be war crime trials in Jerusalem. The documentation on this website and your knowledge will be vital. Items from the week. I remind everyone that we are now in the midst of World War J, the global war against the Jews in the Middle East, here at home, and roiling through the nations of the world. Plus, our nation will soon be fighting for its very democracy and personal freedoms, and historic and unforgettable electoral choice. So, some items from the week as we look ahead to the year. We start off with the war against the Jews, which right now before our eyes is cloning the Hitler regime. In Turkey, we see stores with signs declaring Jews not welcome. Additionally, in Turkey, we see Sagev Jahexel, an Israeli soccer player, suspended from the Antalya sport team, highly rated. It was nothing more than his gesture on the field for the return of the Israeli hostages. So the police arrested him for incitement. He is now back in Israel. Naftali Bennett has called out the Turks for this blatant anti-Jewish act. In South Africa, a Jewish cricket team captain of U19, David Teeger, was stripped of his title before the World Cup for his own protection, quote, because he was Jewish. But it seems Canada is among the worst places in the world right now for Jewish people, as official inequality teams up with Arab Street hooligans. Palestinian hoodlums are surrounding and attacking Jews and often threatening or inflicting actual violence. At the University of Calgary, student in the biology program, her name is Thea Libin, says that since October 7th, quote, I've experienced more instances of anti-Semitism in that time than I have in my entire life. She said, for example, a Hamas supporter came up behind her and grabbed her Magen David necklace, her Jewish star, and shouted, "You are a colonizer," close quote. The National Post newspaper just ran a letter stating, quote, I've never felt this unsafe in this country until now, close quote. Jewish teachers in Ontario say they are scared for their very life. One Toronto synagogue leader stated, we have witnessed fire bombings, shootings, blockades, and calls for the annihilation of the Jews on Canadian streets. That's a quote. But astonishingly, Toronto area synagogues were denied funding under the Public Safety Canada Protection Program. There is much more that makes Canada's Jews among the most threatened in the Americas. And soon we will have to be treating Canada like a third world country when it comes to Jew hatred. Next, as we look at the hate machines that have become our colleges across America, from Harvard to Hellish U, we can focus on a burning source of that hatred: discrimination, race baiting, Marxist control, and anti-Semitism. I refer to DEI, the misnamed and fraudulent Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion offices, which sow class bias, race bias, and religious bias as their raison d'etre and a social infection. This awareness is sweeping across aroused minds in America as lawsuits are prepared and filed, not quite daily, but certainly several per week, and as complaints are being filed with the Office of Civil Rights. We see DEI, which can be misread for the Latin term for God himself, is all a complete fraud. They claimed they were so concerned with misgendering, microaggressions, and respect doctrines. But when it came to the Jews, suddenly the emperor is seen naked without clothes. This because the hate mongers in this class suddenly allow hate speech to slide under the skirt of freedom of speech. Kill the Jews, gas the Jews, from the river to the sea. You're a settler colonist. I won't sit next to a Jew. And oh yes, we think calling for mass extermination, ethnic cleansing, and genocide of Jews can just squeeze by as nuanced context. And if you complain to the college administration about any of this anti-Semitic speech, you are attacked for being intolerant. I have a long list of exhibits of DEI as a corrupt, twisted hate yeast, rising too fast and becoming ever more vast. But look no further than my own personal Exhibit A, Johns Hopkins University, a bastion of entrenched top-down anti-Semitism and Jew hatred for decades. Just days ago, they started the year by Chief Diversity Officer Dr. Sharita H. Golden issuing a newsletter to all staff and students defining the very definition of privilege. The list of condemned includes, get this, all males, white people, Christians, mid-aged people, able-bodied people, middle and owning class, English-speaking people. Let me repeat that. The people targeted as being privileged by Johns Hopkins in their official newsletter was all males, white people, Christians, mid-aged people, able-bodied people, middle and owning class, English-speaking people. The outrage was swift and monumental. The next day was unequivocally retracted, and congressmen and congresswomen are now calling for official investigations. OCR at the Department of Education is looking into it right now. We have not heard the last of the outrageous abuse of Jewish people at Johns Hopkins, an institution where I have presented lectures for years. And during my last lecture, a few months ago, not one of the geniuses I was lecturing to even knew what the Normandy invasion was. As long as we are on the diversity topic, I was struck by the extraordinary election time race baiting of MSNBC provocateur Joy Reid. After Donald Trump's historic first time ever majority win in Iowa, Reid chastised and denigrated the state of Iowa and its Republican base as, quote, white Christians. White Christians? You have a problem with white Christians? This is a white Christian country. This country is more than 70% Christian and white by almost the same majority. It is only 12% black and just 2% Jewish. You have something against Iowa farmers? Fine. I suggest you boycott them. Stop eating farm-raised food and agriculture. These hypocrites, smug and repug, want to belittle the people who break their backs to put food on your table, but look no further than a mean-spirited race baiter like Joy Reid. Who's making the money of this type of broadcast racism? It's MSNBC, part of NBC, part of the Wall Street cabal that believes race, hatred, and divisiveness is just a market niche to increase stock value. The only equity they care about is their investment equity. And there and then we can see why this country cannot come together. There's just too much damn money in sowing dissension, class frictions, and disunity. But America is slowly fighting back. The university lawsuits are stacked up on the runway like jets at O'Hare, waiting their turn to go airborne. Just last week, we see a Jewish lawsuit against Rutgers, and this week, one against the University of Pennsylvania, and yesterday, the Brandeis Center just filed their latest, this time against American University. Behold, ye bitches and bastards of hatred. The Jews will do more this time. We will educate, we will cooperate, we will coordinate, and trust me, we will litigate. And we are done with that for starters. We shall chase it down by litigating some more. This time we shall not just survive Jew hatred. This time we will fight back. The concept of justice was born with the Jews in the desert under Moses, and by golly, this year we will see it flex its wings and raise high its scales in courtrooms everywhere across this country, because we're out of options, and this time we will not board the boxcars or jump into the pits the newly invigorated and bottoms-up Jew-hating uber activist Democratic base has in mind for us. Yes, people coming to a computer screen and a political convention near you no later than August of this year. The showdown for freedom. And this brings me to my brief monologue about a wondrous segue topic. The travel warriors reveal their view of the restaurants on high and down low that we all frequent. Our restaurants reflect our society. They reveal who we are, how we are, and even when and where we are. Who will deny that France is defined by its cuisine, that India extols its culinary expertise, that Italy revels in its gastronomy, and that Israeli chefs have carved out a global niche for inventing a new food and ethnic renaissance. An army moves on its stomach, yes, but so does society at large. Our penchant for that expensive and lavish meal with attention to eye-loving plates, the quick and easy glory of a slice of the best pizza, eaten, of course, from the Triangular Corner Inn. You know this show has a love of fine whiskeys. The plates before that glasses are filled will be discussed here in a new feature that we call The Full Plate. And who better to reveal the best and all the rest than our own travel warriors, Josh Block and Juda Engelmayer, two men who, like me, cross the map mercators of the planet for work and once in a while some play along the way. They have experienced the best and all the rest. I'll start with my own recent suggestions. Earlier this month, I visited Tampa, home to some of the nation's most exciting and satisfying restaurants. The top number one in Tampa and probably Florida is Burns Steakhouse, which requires a reservation many months in advance. Burns staff is especially skilled and trained with military precision to treat every table like a private dukedom of respect. Desserts are all famously and lavishly served on a separate floor with their own dessert menu. The third floor, yes, ladies and gentlemen, after the main course at Burns, you take an elevator up to dessert. Burns number one in Tampa. Followed by Colombia, a Spanish, Cuban, and Italian food tradition that extols the best of Hispanic and Italian culture with its wonderful food, a joyous atmosphere, and a special embrace of excitement for every visitor. Mojitos, paella, and platos grande abound. Third, I pick Lavarones, Tampa's number one Italian restaurant. Not only can they deliver classic Italian, they serve up the best burger in town. They, in fact, made a Pittsburgh-style burger for me. A half-pounder, black on the outside and totally pink within. It's a cross between a true burger and steak tartare. While in Florida, I also lectured in Boca Raton for several days, and there I found two fabulous and highly recommended restaurants just a few minutes from each other. Seasons 52 and City Fish Market. Crowded, energetic, extraordinary food quality, and I hate to use the cliche, but impeccable service. I went to each one, not once, but twice, and I highly recommend them both. That's all for me, so I turn it over to Travel Warriors. Crisis Manager Juda Engelmayer, Globetrotter Extraordinaire, is on hand, but first, I give it to Democratic strategist Josh Block, who has eaten in far-off lands, sometimes at a fine linen table, and sometimes on his lap. Take it, Josh.
Thanks, Edwin. And I'll walk through just a few places that I've been recently that I've enjoyed. I was in Dubai in early December, and I ate at the Buddha Bar, which is in the Marina area. So the food's good. It's it's one of a chain, but it's still a fun place. The atmosphere was good. The food's good. You're outside, the beautiful patio, great view, and it's a lot of fun. And late at night, it turns into a bit of a nightclub. So if you're game to party, you can just stick it out. And one of the hotels I stayed at in Dubai, the Grosvenor House, had a restaurant in it that was a buffet. And this buffet, I have to tell you, rivaled some of the Vegas buffets. I mean, you really had everything you could ask for. And they would cook you steak, they would cook you lobster, they would cook you lamb chops, and then, let alone the pastas and the dessert. So, I mean, that was a pretty incredible deal and just an amazing array of food and really a lot of fun. Great place to go on an empty stomach. I was in Las Vegas, and I got to go to the Sphere actually on opening night, which was pretty exciting. So I got to see the E02 and that whole show, which is really amazing. I don't know if anybody's listening has been there, but if you're in Las Vegas or have the chance to see a concert or a movie inside the Sphere, I highly recommend it. It's a really amazing experience. Now, there was no food there, although they did have a bar with some drinks. I guess they did serve some snacks, but I didn't eat there. The two places that I would mention from this trip were Bouchon, which is a Thomas Keller kind of breakfast place, which is not impossible to get into if you make a reservation the day before or so, and you can go for breakfast. They have amazing popovers, and the food is extraordinary. Just for if you want French toast, they've got that. If you want crab Benedict, they've got that. If you want lunch, they've got those things too. So great place. The other one I love was Mott 32, which is an Asian place. We had a little bit of Peking duck there. The Peking duck was really great, very crispy, beautifully done, a lot of fun, good place. Mott 32. In DC, I guess, Edwin, to wrap it up, a few of the places that I really like, I'll go with one that everybody knows, Les Diplomats, downtown on 16th Street. It's a favorite, and they've got great food, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a very popular place. So you're crowded, make your reservations early, and see who you see there. You never know who'll turn up. I really miss 10 Pen. I don't know if anybody remembers that place, but it used to be downtown. It was a great place, a Jeff Tunk's restaurant. He's got several other places in Washington, but I really loved the food that he made there. It was, in particular, they made this red pineapple curry shrimp thing that was so good. I mean, my God, it was one amazing food. Missed that one. All right, two obscure places, also in the Asian category, two for dumplings. One is Bob's Shanghai in Rockville, Maryland. It's a great place. I mean, like the soup dumplings they make there are out of this world, genuinely. It's very busy. I recommend takeout and Bob's Shanghai. I mean, boy, is that one good. The other is downtown in Washington, D.C. on Wisconsin Avenue, not far up the hill from Georgetown. It is called Dumplings and More. It's also a great dumplings place, and it has some great Chinese food there. Crispy shredded beef is out of this world. So I think I'll stop there, Edwin. And, how about that? 4 cities, I think we did, and 3 cities and some good restaurants. So
thank you very much. That was good. And I'll tell you what interested me is you are, of course, in Washington. You're not next door to me, but you're just down the street. But it's interesting, you mentioned Bob's Shanghai. Now, I can tell you that Bob's Shanghai is the best Chinese food around here. But it's actually not Chinese cuisine as much as Taiwanese cuisine. And it's the only place around here with a Taiwanese menu. And yes, it is great for takeout, which we do all the time. And sometimes we actually go and sit there. You mentioned 10 Pen, which I used to go to, and it's gone. 10 Pen stood for 10 Pennsylvania. That was its address, and I'm really sorry to see it go. Now, Juda is not with us because, of course, Juda is a crisis manager, and he happens to be in a small crisis now, but he's rushing out of a courtroom to get to a camera. And while we're talking, and before we start our interesting list of questions, and we've got some hot ones, I just want to recognize the many people that I see here. First of all, I see Faye from Salt Lake City. So she wants to know right now, why am I not mentioning the Red Iguana as my favorite Mexican restaurant in the United States? And so Faye, I have mentioned the Red Iguana. We actually showed it the last time. And yes, I was so happy to visit there when you had me speak at your synagogue. I noticed that Rachel from Manhattan is here, the author, and she wonders what is my favorite restaurant in New York City. And it's hard to say because the ownership has changed. And when I was in New York City, I used to basically fall into these wonderful Indian, Chinese, and Mexican hole-in-the-walls around the corner from my favorite hotel. And the management has changed. You can't count on anything now. There is Rosa's Mexicanos. Now listen to this. If you're a lover of Rosa's Mexicanos on First Avenue, don't go there because they changed the location. And with that location, they changed the ambiance. Instead, go to the one way downtown near the Village. It's huge and you will absolutely love it. Josh, what's your favorite New York restaurant right now?
Gray's Papaya.
I'm surprised you didn't say Orange Julius. Okay.
No, baby, Gray's Papaya, because they have those hot dogs. They go crunch when you bite them, baby.
I should also
they're so good.
I should also say that the best paella in Sacramento cannot be got in a restaurant, but in the kitchen of Mark Rausch.
I will say that I've had a very memorable meal at Sushi by Gary in New York, which may not be the first sushi place that leaps to mind for folks, although it's on the west side, I think, Midtown. But it's I got omakase there one night, and boy, did they do it right! It was unbelievable.
And, I noticed that Rita from Century City is with us, and my favorite restaurant in Century City, which has about 10 or 20 of them, is absolutely Toscanova. The first thing we do when we come out to Century City is we go to this wonderful Italian restaurant called Toscanova, which is loaded with movie stars and everybody else because it's right in the middle of William Morris and CAA and many of the studios. Let's get to our questions. I'm sure they're very hot tickets. From the watch party in the Villages, what do you like at a restaurant when you are home, and how often do you eat out? Okay, I'll answer first. I'm going to be honest with you. I have been to so many exquisite, highfalutin restaurants. I want simplicity when I am home. The first thing is I got to park right in front of the door and not walk more than 5 steps to the front door of the restaurant. I need people to leave us alone, let us eat in peace, and then we need high quality. And so I've got 3 here. I go to Seasons 52, I go to the Stamford Grill, and I go to a wonderful place called The Lodge. So if you're in Washington, you want to get away from all this fancy stuff and the $48 to park and everything else, just take the Metro up to Rockville Way and go to any of those 3s. Josh, you are here. Where do you go locally?
Some of the places I named are among my favorites. I will say that, since COVID, I find myself going out to eat a lot less than I used to. First, for work, I used to go out for lunch. And sometimes when I was working as a press secretary, I used to double lunch. So I would do a noon lunch with a journalist, and then I would do like a 1:30. So I would eat twice. I mean, I was really getting out there. And so we go out less now as a family, less as a couple, I will say. But I'm also blessed with the fact that I've been married to someone who's an extraordinary cook. And so I sometimes find, often actually, that the food that I get fed and I sometimes help make at dinner is better than I would get if I went out to a restaurant. So I feel blessed in that way that we can get great healthy food right here in the house, and we love to cook, so we do that a lot. But I will say we go out a fair amount, and some of the places that we eat regularly, I didn't mention. One of them is a Mexican place, and it is a chain. It's called Uncle Julio's, and I gotta say I like their chicken enchiladas with green sauce. I don't think they can be beat. It's pretty good. So. I sub in the refried beans, and I always go with corn tortillas, Edwin, because flour tortillas and Mexican food don't mix except on a burrito.
All right. Now, I should say right now, before every show, my wife makes me a bowl of Mexican menudo. And somehow that inspires me. But as long as you're talking Mexico, I'm going to go to the #1 Mexico City restaurants in a couple of weeks when I do a 4-event tour in Mexico City. That's right. And they promised me that I'd be going to the #1 restaurant in just about every style of Mexican cuisine that I have. We're going to go to our questions here. And the first question is from our good friend, Wes. Okay. What does Wes have to say? I have only one question, no preamble. What is your cholesterol level? Okay, my cholesterol level, first of all, I'm very careful about what I eat, and I eat a lot of fresh fruits. We eat almost no processed foods. My cholesterol level is at or below the best level. Now, I do take, like the rest of the world, cholesterol medicine. But I noticed that some people in the chat group.
Hang on. Is your are we talking LDL or HDL here, Edwin? And I gotta say, I feel like Wes's question here is really kind of rooting for a coronary. I don't know.
Well,
I feel like he's
it's interesting because we had some very negative responses to it. I didn't mind his question. At least he didn't ask any other embarrassing questions. But all right, let's get to, so now you know. Let's get to the watch party in Newton, Massachusetts. Why did you change your camera view? Okay, I did change my camera view. If you look at Josh, he's looking straight ahead. You look at all these people, they're looking straight ahead. You look at me, and for the last 5 years, 4 years plus, I have a prepared script. And my prepared script, I kind of stick to it. And I'm looking at my keyboard and the camera's on top. Everybody criticized me for that. So I bought a brand new camera. It's sticking right in front of my face. I have to look past it to see everything. That's why I did it. And I can't afford heat in my basement. So I put an extra sweater on. And that's why I changed my look. What about you?
Well, Edwin, I was going to compliment you on your attire today because I too am wearing the extra zip up down here in my basement doing our show. So I feel like we didn't coordinate that, but birds of a feather, my man, birds of a feather.
All right. What is the watch party in Chicago? What is the latest in Israel? All right. So I'm glad you asked. I couldn't incorporate everything into my remarks. The latest in Israel is still fighting as fiercely as it can, but it's changed its vocabulary because the anti-Semites in the Democratic Party are pushing Joe Biden, who is still following his instinct to support Israel. And so they now call it low intensity. But one of the things that Israel has discovered is I believe they used 6,100 tons of concrete to make hundreds of miles of tunnels, including 350 miles more than the Israelis had actually expected. And they found no bomb shelters for the public. And that's because, of course, the Hamas uses its non-combatant population as a strategic asset. They want them to be killed. That's why when Israel was sending rockets up to the rooftops as warnings, little rockets, they told people go up to the rooftops. Now, there have been attempts to claim that Israel is trying to starve out Gaza. Of course, that's completely stupid because they're delivering hundreds and hundreds of truckloads of food and medicine a day. Now, something irritating has occurred just now. Qatar negotiated a bit of a hostage amelioration that Israel would be allowed to deliver in medicines to the hostages. So it was all carefully, with the United States involved, negotiated. And what happened? For each box of Israeli medicine for hostages, 1,000 boxes for the Gaza personnel and population and the fighters of Hamas were delivered. These were immediately distributed by the Red Cross to 6 Gaza hospitals. When the medications for the Jews and the hostages came across, the Red Cross said, we will not distribute them. We won't even touch them. And so all of these medications are standing there at the border crossing and no one will deliver them. And that just goes to show that the International Committee of the Red Cross, which has been anti-Semitic and anti-Israel for decades, is nothing that you should want to be involved with. Do not give your money to the Red Cross. They've done nothing for the hostages. They did not demand to see them. They would not take medications, including the medications that Hamas has agreed to. I believe, based on what I know now, that this war in Gaza will continue through 2025 and that the final act which is to take down the Iranian nuclear facilities, is about 6 months away, because there are a few more steps that Iran must take before it completes approximately 6 atomic bombs, which it intends to throw at Israel. And Israel will not go in this fight against Iran until the last minute. And that last minute will be during these months when those bombs are being assembled. What do you know, Josh?
Well, I think that was a pretty good summary, Edwin. I do think that in the larger context, and we see Iran's tentacles all across the region, and the Houthis getting more involved in the attacks on American ships, on shipping, on international trade, of course, acting on behalf of the Iranians. And the Iranians themselves shooting missiles into Pakistan this week. Then just a few weeks ago, getting into a spat with the folks in Afghanistan. They're at the heart of all of this instability. They're funding all the terrorists, and so I wonder whether this entire conflagration, which Iran had a strong hand in orchestrating, isn't a cover in some way for them to break out with nuclear weapons.
Well, I think that they've raised they've got 83% now. They're racing toward 90% in sufficient volume to produce not the 5 weapons that you and I know about from the Ahmed project, but a 6th one, which I imagine will be test fired in an underground explosion. And I think that we're going to see some sort of denouement probably before the election. And I thank you for the question, and I hope we have answered it. This is Marlene from Grand Rapids. What is the most expensive meal any one of you has eaten? Well, I'm going to tell you my most expensive meal, and I think Josh is going to laugh at this. My most expensive meal was at the Blue Bus on the Egyptian coast, in Nuweiba, which Josh knows. And basically, I was sitting on this beautiful deserted beach with this little restaurant called the Blue Bus. And I could see directly across from me, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. I was in Egypt or close to it, Israel, Eilat. And these guys started bringing out the plates, bringing out the plates, bringing out the plates, large plates, small plates, green plates, red plates, breaded plates, sour, sweet, saucy, meats. We were having such a good time. By the time the day was all over, the dinner was over, they brought out this huge bill, and there was no money to pay for it. They had to drive me 40 miles to an ATM, and I paid for it. That was the single most expensive meal that I ever had. From now on, when I go to a little Arab restaurant, I always say, show me the menu. What about you, Josh?
That's funny. Well, I would say the most expensive was the question, most expensive meal.
Say it again.
Or was the question, what was your most expensive meal? Not dinner or lunch, meal.
Yeah, it could be lunch or
because my most expensive dinner was a lunch. I think on my honeymoon, we stopped in Monaco, and I wanted to eat at Louis XV, which is a very fancy Alain Ducasse restaurant there. And dinner was just so expensive. I think it was like $600 a person or something. I just, it was, I couldn't afford it. But the lunch was, I think much less than half the price. So we went for lunch. But in order to convince my new bride that it would be worth spending the money on eating this food, which would be disposed of within 24 hours, I had to buy her something permanent. So the lunch actually cost me twice the amount of the actual lunch. So I probably could have just gone to dinner if I could have gotten away with it, because I had to buy her a purse so I could get my lunch.
That makes a lot of sense. And I do remember that restaurant. It's right on the right side, and on the left side is the famous Monaco Casino. And that restaurant is famous for serving every course on a different type of plateware. Is that correct?
Well, I don't remember that, actually, to be honest. It was, it's longer ago than I wish to recall. But I remember three things about it, especially. One is that they brought a little stool, a little padded stool for my wife's purse to sit on, so she could put the bag on a little stool. She ordered a Coke, and they brought I think it was a $6 little bottle of Coke, I think a 10-ounce bottle of Coke. And at the end of the meal, they gave us lavender marshmallow, which was extraordinary. And I still remember to this very day, and must have been,
Well, what was
20 plus years ago.
What was more expensive, the purse for your wife or the dinner?
We went to lunch. So the lunch was, we had lunch for two. It was prefixed at like $2.50. So I'd say they were probably equivalent. The purse is probably a little bit more.
Okay. And I'm sure she's happy you told that to the world. So here's a question from Morris in Herzliya. Did Gaza have a restaurant called the Hitler 2? There is the Hitler 2. I have a picture of it. It, strangely enough, no longer has its big red sign saying Hitler 2. Of course, Hitler is a big hero in Gaza. But to be honest with you, I cannot tell you if it was a restaurant or a snack shop or a falafel joint or what it was. But there was definitely a place called Hitler 2. I understand.
I heard they had a happy hour special. Juden wine.
Okay. Well, I think you must have started your happy hour already with that remark. Melanie in Jacksonville. Okay, so here's a question. She wants to know whether the Palestinian Authority is now paying millions in salary policy to the mass murderers and rapists of October 7th. And the answer is yes. The stuff that I wrote about journalistically in my book, Financing the Flames, and I've been to Congress and many other legislatures to protest it. Those salaries are being paid, if you can believe this, to the mass murderers of October 7th. They're being paid by the Palestinian Authority, and about 16% of that money is being underwritten by the resumption of American taxpayer-supported funding, which was brought back into being by Joe Biden. What do you know about that, Josh?
Well, I think your answer was quite succinct, but I will add that they've been paying terrorists and Jew murderers for a long time. And that's why Congress passed legislation that restricted funding to the PA, because they're paying terrorists for killing Jews. And, Qatar is also responsible for paying the salaries of folks in Hamas and others, and so is Iran.
All right, here's Holly in Nashville. She wants to know, can you say, how do you find the best local eats in town when visiting? And what questions do you ask, and what people do you speak to, etc.? Josh, you go first.
I often look for the city, like in the cities, in America at least, there's usually like a city magazine, like Baltimore Magazine or Washingtonian or San Francisco Magazine, and they usually do a once a year cheap eats roundup. So I look for that, or for like the city paper, the local kind of alternative paper in town. Look at their food guides and their food reviews. I use an online search engine, Gayot, Gayot, I think it's called. That is quite a good guide, and usually has a lot of kind of not fancy places in it. And I often just try places that I see that that look like they might be good, and see what I find.
Well, I would say the answer is the same, but there's another important element. When you're on tour, or in your case, you're on some business trip, time is indispensable. It's the most important course in your meal. You're definitely going to have to settle for the place that is within just a couple of minutes of your hotel. In fact, I've been telling people that just went from Boca to Tampa. I had no time. So I had to go into a gas station and pick up some counter food and eat it in the car, and racing toward Tampa, where I was getting the best Italian meal in the city. So a lot of what we do is we eat defensively. Frequently, there's no time to go down to breakfast in a hotel. and you have to have room service, which is just about the same money if you consider the tip, so you can get work done and tend to your emails and all that other stuff. It's a very good question. Now, there's another element of this, Holly, and that is when you're being taken around by your local host and your local friends, they want you to go to the best restaurant that they know because they know the city. Harvey has done that. Josh's friends have done that. And so they're going to take you to the absolute best place. Naturally, they're going to ask you, is there anything you don't need? So in my case, I don't need pork.
There's also a, in that vein, most cities have and places have a specialty that that they're well known for, and I think it was R.W. Apple, the former New York Times writer who traveled a lot, had a book out about the kind of the best places to eat in each of these cities. Not fancy places, but kind of places that have been around for 30, 50, 100 years that are great. The po' boy place in Louisiana, in New Orleans, you want to try, or the barbecue place in Memphis.
And I should mention that just because you said that in Chicago, you want to have a Chicago hot dog. Now, where do you get the best Chicago hot dog? Well, the best Chicago hot dog place is pretty much out of business. It's called Fluky's, except for one place. It's a small counter in the Walmart in suburban Niles. So here, a guy knowing all the best restaurants and the most highfalutin restaurants in Chicago, the first thing I do is I stop at the Walmart in Niles, walk in, and get myself a couple of great Chicago hot dogs. Thank you for that question, Holly. Here's a question from Murray. What is your favorite restaurant in Israel? Josh.
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is Safon Abraxas in Tel Aviv, north of Abraxas in English. The same chef, Shani, he does a miznon, which it's kind of like a more casual sandwich place. There's several in Israel, of course, one in Paris, and I know there's one in Las Vegas because I just saw it when I was there.
Now, there's a fabulous restaurant that we discovered brand new in the bottom floor of the Tel Aviv Hilton, Daria, but it's devoted to the special foods of the Silk Road. And so they had medieval foods and ancient foods that were eaten by the Jewish groups, the Bukharian groups, and other groups along the Silk Road. So that's definitely quite interesting. Now, we have a question here from the audience.
Can I add one thing, Edwin? Yeah. Sorry. I also want to give a shout out to Johnny's Falafel in Tel Aviv, which is the greatest falafel in all of Israel.
Yeah, and don't go to Dr. Shakshuka in Jaffa. I know they do a lot of advertising, and I know that everybody wants to go to Dr. Shakshuka. Just don't do it. But if you're in Jaffa, by all means, ladies and gentlemen, the Old Man in the Sea, an Arab-run and operated powerhouse where they will bring out 30 or 40 plates at a time. And unlike the Blue Bus in Nueva, they actually have a menu you could look at. And I think that you will find it very, very worth it.
Johnny's Falafel, by the way, Chernikovsky 4, it's kosher, and it opens tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. in Israel.
You know, what's interesting is everybody's nuts about the great chefs of Israel. You can't believe this, that I took a taxi to a restaurant. I said, take me to this restaurant. The guy says, oh, but the chef has changed. And it's unbelievable how nuts they are. And of course, Israeli food is a confluence of all these different cuisines, these Sephardic cuisines, Egyptian, Polish, Moroccan, all these different types of cuisines. Now, Phyllis, who's in Jerusalem, who, by the way, makes a great dinner herself. She's in South Jerusalem. She says that she wants to know, did I say that the best paella in town that I've had is in Sacramento? The best paella I had was in Sitges, Spain, on the seashore, especially black paella, squid ink. But if you exclude that, the best paella in the United States is not served in a restaurant. It's served by Mark Roush, the head of the Auto Channel, who is an expert at making fabulous pans of paella. Okay, thank you for that question. How bad is the confrontation between the the Texas Department of the Military and the Border Patrol. This is very important and under-examined flashpoint in our country. Basically, the Texas Rangers, but the Texas military, it's a military unit, have seized as Texas property, which it is Texas property, a small park, which is on the edge of the Rio Grande River. And that is a place where the Customs and Border Patrol were allowing in thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens, essentially by cutting through the razor wire and giving them a helping hand in, and thereby encouraging further. While the Texas military has actually grabbed that and refused, quote, refused to allow the federal officers in. Now, the head of the Border Patrol Union has said that is the most helpful thing that anyone has done. The Biden administration, unfortunately, lied. The Biden administration lied and said, by keeping us out of there, you caused 2 people to die in the river because we could not rescue them. Well, I actually have a letter from the Attorney General to the Department of Justice and a filing that's going to soon go to the Supreme Court, in which it turns out that that statement by the Department of Justice and the Biden administration is an absolute lie. The federal officers, it's been documented, came there and said that a couple of people drowned a few hours before and they wanted access to it. And this was on the Mexican side, not the Texas side. It's very sad to see, but you've got to understand something. If the federal government says we're coming in and Texas says we're not letting you in, you have not a Mexican standoff, you have a Texas standoff, and that could even be much more treacherous. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I want you to hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 minute away. But first, I want to thank my esteemed guest, Josh Block. I also want to thank my talented international team, including Rebecca in the Philippines, Carol in Maryland, John in Japan, what an editor, and Wes in San Francisco. He's a digital genius, all for their outstanding work, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. My team, each of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we all owe them. And I'll see everyone back here in a week at 3 p.m. We have a very important story on destroyed cities coming up. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to the edwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for events. I'm in Florida next week. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple, Kobo platform, or Google in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 200 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust, soon to be a major Hollywood blockbuster. Or if you want an autographed copy of any of my books, hit my personal newly redesigned website, edwinblack.com, and click books. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click that notification button like thousands of others. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by a bold international crew. You can follow me at Edwin Black Book on that thing called X, as well as Facebook. Remember, today's episode was sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the just released audiobook of Faye Lincoln's highly acclaimed volume, Values That Shape the World. It was done as part of a special Google Books project, and you can download it at valuesthatshaptheworld.com. If you see our world values disintegrating before your eyes, try this book. And now for my closing word of wisdom. The forces of darkness are constantly fighting the forces of light. Sometimes we can't see which is which. I'm zooming out. Bless all of you.